All right, good morning. Welcome. So if you are standing in the back, feel free to come on in, have a seat. Hello. So we're going to be talking about Adobe Photoshop, a tool that pretty much every video editor, producer, motion graphic artist, photographer, medical professional, scientist on the planet uses. And we're going to alternate between hard things and easy things once I get my computer up on the screen. So I'm going to kind of oscillate. Now, it is day 2 of NAB. Some of you have been here for 5 days already. Some of you just got here. What we're going to do is interval training this morning, kind of like a Stairmaster. Easy, hard. Easy, hard. Still not my computer. So thanks. So right now it's hard to present, but in a second it'll be easy, and then we'll get going. And there we go. So we're going to talk about different techniques. So no matter what you do, hopefully this morning you'll see something that saves you time or gives you a new idea to try. So very quickly, we're going to be talking about Adobe Photoshop. My name's Rich Harrington, and I have a visual communications company outside of Washington, D.C. I also publish a website that's been around for 18 years called Photo Focus that focuses on photography and a bit of video as well. I'm not too hard to find. At the end of the class, unless you're ready to, well, some of you may have seen me here, but at the end of the class, I'll put this back up. We've got 20 hours of Adobe training that's live and free. Not live training, but ready now for watching that you can watch. So I'll put that back up at the end of the class. You can take a picture then, but we're going to jump right in and start. And let's do something simple. So right now I'm using Adobe Bridge. Adobe Bridge is a companion program that ships with Photoshop, After Effects, and with Premiere Pro. And it is a visual operating system. It lets you browse and organize all of your files. For example, I can select all my images and press Control or Command B, and I'm in review mode. And this works with video clips, works with stills. You can go on through and look at things and assign star ratings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those star ratings show up in Premiere and After Effects, by the way. You can browse PDF documents. You can browse other file types. And if there's something you don't want, you simply hit the down arrow to drop it. No meat hook, no craggly wood. Now, any of you use a program like iTunes to manage your music? Put things in a playlist that you want to listen to or use. Same thing here. I can click on a new collection, and all of those assets are added to that collection. Now, what's also great is that this can hold video files. This can hold documents, scripts, budgets, everything. And what most people don't realize is that Adobe doesn't have a universal media manager. So the stuff you do in After Effects doesn't get media managed by Premiere. The stuff you do in Premiere doesn't get managed in After Effects, etc. But this application can see and preview everything. So if you simply make a collection for all of your assets before you start importing into other programs, doesn't matter if they're on network hard drives, local hard drives, everything can be found. Another thing that's cool is if you've got footage or stills that don't have unique file names. Any of you shoot GoPro? Any of you have files called GoPro 001 on your hard drive? Every time you change a battery, it resets. And a lot of consumer and prosumer cameras do this. Well, what we can do in Bridge is say Tools, Batch Rename. And this allows you to do a naming such as the project name, the date created, hours, minutes, seconds. And when you click Rename, all of your files now have unique file names, including a date timestamp. So if you're dealing with the producer or other information, it's super easy to find things. And this is going to cut down on problems. It's also just like a web browser, so it's really easy to navigate. All right, let's do something easy, and that is sizing an image for video. I'm just going to work with some raw files here really quick. Let's just reveal these, and I'm going to trash the XMP files. We'll talk more about raw in just a second, but I highly recommend working with raw files. Now, I've been in a lot of TV stations through the years. I do a lot of on-site workflow consulting for broadcasters. And one of the things that I see repeatedly is people having sticky notes or a sheet of paper stuck to the wall with all of their graphic sizes. It's nonsense. You don't have to memorize these numbers. Now, you eventually will learn them. You do something 5,000 times, it might stick. But the point is if you're in Premiere Pro and you go, oh, I need a new Photoshop file. All you have to do is say, File, New, Photoshop file. And it instantly picks up the dimensions of your sequence and the frame rate if you're going to be doing an animation or something in Photoshop that moves. Click OK. Feel free to name it Graphic 1. There we go. I'll store it on the desktop because that's where files go. and it launches Photoshop. And you're like, well, yes, it's a blank canvas. And now all you have to do is say File, Place. And what this will do is embed a copy of the photo into the Photoshop document. So I can go and grab that raw file. Let's grab this dinosaur, and I'll click Place. It drops it in, and I can develop that raw file. By the way, rather than guessing with sliders, why not just move the histogram where you want it to go to give you the proper exposure? This way you don't have to guess. Just pull the histogram and say, go here. Similarly, there's the targeted adjustment tool here that lets you do things like, oh, I don't like this color blue. Let's roll that to purple. Boy, I really wish that the dinosaur had a little more saturation. And while we're at it, can we lighten that up? Did I have to make a single selection, a paintbrush, a lasso? No. This tool's amazing, and I'll show you where it is not in Camera Raw. You can do it as well with the Curves Adjustment tool, with the Hue Saturation. The Targeted Adjustment tool is perhaps the best tool that Adobe has in Photoshop, and I'm hoping it will make its way into some other places. You can do awesome things with it. So now I click OK, and it drops the photo in. This is the full raw photo. Just hold down the Shift and the Option key and scale. Now, close, excuse me, save. And when you switch back to Premiere, you'll see that it updates. There it is. Now, if you're working with the client and they come back and they say, you know, it's not quite right, because it's never right the first time, no big deal. Control E. You're back in Photoshop. You double-click on the file, and you're redeveloping the raw file. I grab that targeted adjustment tool, say, you know what, I'd like to change the hue up here a little bit, and it moves the slider. Okay, there we go, it's blue, I like that. And you know what, I really wish that that was just a little darker. I didn't have to guess where to grab or what slider to use, I just used the targeted adjustment tool. By the way, that also works for curves or grayscale. So all of these are going to work. So you can take advantage of all of those. Your client says, you know what, I love me a good vignette, because they all seem to. And you just pull that all in. Click OK. They go, you know what, can we punch in a little bit? Sure. Control T. The full raw file is embedded. Not a single pixel was discarded. Close, save, switch back to Premiere, and it's updated. So you have that great flexibility and round-trip workflow. This is a strongly recommended workflow. It makes things a lot easier to work with your stills. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about raw files for a second and what we can do. So if you shoot time-lapse or if you work with image sequences, I would encourage you to shoot raw. If you have a really big budget and you can afford to and have lots of hard drive space, I would also encourage you to shoot raw video. I only get to shoot raw video about 3% of the time, but I do love it for certain types of situations. So what we can do here is some pretty amazing stuff. Raw is very flexible. So a lot of folks don't realize how much information is inside of a photo that they might be missing. By the way, here's a GoPro raw file. New GoPros can also shoot raw. So we can open these up and we can do a whole bunch. For example, I mentioned earlier, just click on the histogram. Oh, you know what? Let's pull the whites down a little bit and the highlights down. There we go. Let's move the midtones over a little bit, but pull the shadows up, but make sure the blacks are crisp. I like having an interactive histogram because rather than looking at one set of sliders while trying to look at a scope, isn't it nice to just look at the scope and do what you want at the same place? Now, same thing. Grab that targeted adjustment tool here, and I'm going to say, you know what? Let's do a parametric curve. Lift there, pull down over here. That was easy. How about let's have richer skies? Okay, crank up the saturation. A little more down here. Ooh, that kind of looks bad. It looks pinkish. So let's just roll the hue. There we go, done. This is a new way of thinking about color and color correction, and I want you to wrap your head around that you don't have to necessarily know what slider to click. Instead, you could just focus on your image and click and drag and move the data that you're looking at. You literally are touching the photo and say, get the hell over there, or get a little brighter, or roll the hue. This is a very easy way to work. And remember, Even a little GoPro camera can now shoot RAW. So it's very easy. You know, we recover some highlights. I'll pull this long exposure down, get some nice rich blacks and pop the clarity. Jump on over to the tab here and say remove the wide angle distortion. There we go. It automatically recognized the metadata from the camera, knew exactly what type of camera it was. While I'm at it, let's grab the transform tool. And I'm going to say, you know what? This should be a straight line. And this should also be straight. And you know what would be nice is if that was straight. And let's go ahead and just tone this off a little bit off the top. Now you can go in and start to drag your own lines to define things. You can move these around a little bit, but you can do complete remapping of the image. And again, RAW is amazing. You have so much data in here, just one click away. So rather than bumping up the ISO and overdoing it on the noise, don't. By the way, one last secret. Any of you ever sharpen your images, put a little detail back in? When you sharpen, it tends to put a lot of noise in the image. But if you just hold down the Alt key and drag the mask slider, you can see exactly what you're sharpening. And you can reduce the sharpening so it's only sharpening the edges. So now I've added detail without adding noise to any of the flat areas. Hold down the Alt key and drag the noise reduction sliders and you'll see things. You get a grayscale image to preview. Hold down the Alt key and drag the white slider and you can see where it's clipping, where the hot and cold pixels are, where you need to do some recovery, where the black pixels are clipping. The Alt key is Adobe for show me everything that's useful that doesn't fit in the user interface by default. Try holding down the Alt key when you click and drag sliders and all sorts of useful information appears. All right, that was some of our easier things. I'm going to go to something a little bit harder here. Any of you do time-lapse photography? Couple? Okay. How about aerial photography? All right, we'll do both really quick. So I'll do the first one with aerial. So most people don't realize that you can use RAW files with drones now. So if you shoot something RAW, like this was shot on an Autel drone using the Adobe DNG format. I was flying my GoPro drone the other day. It uses a GPR file. That's a modified Adobe DNG file. Fly a DJI drone, it can shoot DNG. So you're looking at this, and this is a tiny sensor, smaller than your cell phone. Well, remember the tricks we just did? Boy, it would be nice if this was brighter and this was darker and it had more saturation and the greens were a little greener, but not quite so of that green. How about more like that green? And grab a gradient and drag for a nice neutral gradient. Pull down the exposure, make the sky bluer. See how easy that was? Everything is just a click away. You don't have to overthink it. Whether you're doing time-lapse, panoramas, or anything else, all you have to do is select all the images and say sync, and you can tell everything to synchronize across those photos so they're identical. And then if you have a panoramic like this, I'm just flying a drone and going tap, turning it a little bit. Make sure there's about 25% overlap. Merge to not HDR, merge to pano in this case. And it will merge all of these into one panoramic photo. Now I've got a great backdrop for my motion graphics piece. I've got a great backdrop to use for a virtual set or an intro or to print. And look at that. The entire horizon, it's loading right now at full res, but the entire horizon was totally blended together with zero issues. We just have to let it finish processing here. And this is still a RAW file, which means that you can do everything that you need to. There we go. Now we're at full quality. Look at that. Handled everything. Blended all those textures together, the mountains. And if you need to tweak things, this is one giant RAW file. Everything can still be developed using all your RAW tools. So this is pretty amazing. And the ability to stay RAW as long as possible is great. Now we'll do a time-lapse example in a minute. But let's do this really quick. Any of you ever want to stylize your footage? give it a unique look, or you have a shot that just you can't figure out which of the 80 sliders in the Lumetri panel are going to fix it. Now, I love the Lumetri panel. It's very well organized. It does some awesome things, but I have color corrected in Photoshop for 20 plus years. Premiere, I've color corrected a lot in, and in After Effects, the Lumetri panel, while the effect is all there, and it's great, in typical After Effects fashion, there's like no graphic interface. It's just all sliders. Man up, here it is, move it around, woman up, just they're there, read it, do it. Well, Photoshop makes it super easy to fix color. There are so many things we can do in Photoshop to fix color. So the other day, I got some footage from a client. Not this shot that I'm going to show you because I'm not going to pick up my client on a national stage. But let's just say you got some footage that had a color cast that you didn't like. Well, there is an incredible tool in Photoshop to automatically remove color cast. Let me show you. All you have to do is click on the adjustment section and click on curves. Now, most people are afraid of curves because they don't know where to click. That's why there's a word auto. But what was the magical key we learned before? Alt. Alt auto. Oh, you mean there's 5 different automatic fixes? I don't just have to use the one? Sure. So how about fix per channel contrast, snap neutral midtones? Oh, look, we just totally removed the color cast from the footage. And while I'm at it, if something I don't like, I could toss on that hue saturation adjustment. Grab the on image tool and click on the blue, and I'm adjusting just the blue. There we go, see? And it automatically targets the correct color, and you can manipulate those. When you're all done, simply rasterize the video file, or you can grab a still image from Premiere, that would work too, and simply make sure that that is flattened as a background. New background from layer. Now, File, Export, Color Lookup Table. And you can spit out a LUT that you can use in Premiere, After Effects, Resolve, or anywhere else. Now, if you were in Premiere and you were doing it here, this would be super simple. You can load this clip up, click on it, and just say, oh, you know what? File, and I would like to export, and you can pull that out. And that's going to spit out a still. So you can pull out the still from the export menu, File, Export, and you can pull that off. Or you can export the whole clip, but in here, you can choose to make a still image, like a TIFF file. See? And you can spit that out. There we go. And I'll just export that and write it out. Okay? And that would make it pretty easy. Now, you can set in and out points so it doesn't do the whole thing, and it'll just do one frame. So if you just went in, out, and you chose that, File, Export, it's going to go ahead and make a single file that you can open up in Photoshop very easily. There we go. Now, one file, and I can open that. All right, let's talk about something else that's useful. So when you're making those LUTs, one of the things I like to use is a color checker. Now, X-Rite makes these color checkers that have photo uses, have video uses. I use these all the time to correct footage. We've got a lot of clients where it's really important that the color is consistent because we do a lot of advertising and marketing pieces. So you could put a color checker on set, and what it's going to allow you to do is ensure that color is accurate. And what's great about that is you don't have to guess. So for example here, let's just show you what this might look like. I can take that color checker, open it up, and I can build a LUT. So you can use any of these adjustment layers here that you want. See? Each of these is just a combination of Photoshop adjustment layers. Things like curves, black and white adjustments, blending modes. And when you're happy, File, Export, Color Lookup Table, and you've instantly got an effect that's going to work inside of Premiere and After Effects. So if I come up with a black and white film look that I like, File, Export, Color Lookup Table. There it is. We'll call that BW Film 1. Save it to the desktop for now. There we go. And now back in Premiere Pro or After Effects, I can take that, select the clip. Let's just open that up. We'll take this one here. This is nice. And I can grab it, come on over to Creative and say Browse, and simply toss that on. And you'll notice you have an intensity slider, so you can easily adjust how strong the effect is. So rather than having to deal with everything else, use these lookup tables to apply an effect and then know that you can quickly tweak it. But remember, you may still need to use the basic correction section up here to get the shot looking right before you apply the LUT. So you might have to tweak the exposure a little bit and get the shot looking prepared. But once it's ready, then you can go to Creative and just apply the LUT that you want to give it the treatment. So it works really well. Got an ad campaign, a print campaign, a web campaign. Any of that work can be used to create a lookup table. All right, we have just a couple of minutes left, and I want to show you a few more things. Here's one. We got 2 things left we're going to fit in, maybe 3. Let's talk about content aware. So Adobe Photoshop has a lot of tools with the word content aware in it. In fact, content aware appears like 9 times in Adobe's toolset. And each one's different, and each one's useful. So if you ever have a stock photo or a background like this, and you want to use this for green screen, this would be the perfect green screen shot, except for the fact that there's a large backside here of a climber. That would be distracting to have a static climber behind there. But I can use this totally as a backdrop for an interview or green screen if there wasn't a person in it. So I'll just grab my lasso tool and make a quick selection. Just make sure you go around the object. There we go. And then you just say Edit Fill and choose Content Aware from the pop-up. Choose Color Adaptation as well. And you run it, and it disappears. And if you want to run it again, each time you run it, it regenerates and gets a little more accurate. I usually run it 3 or 4 times. And it's pretty amazing, particularly with organic textures, how it can pull things out. Now, it works in lots of other ways. If you've got a person, for example, you can say Edit Content Aware Scale and click this person icon and it'll identify. And now you can re-stretch the photo without stretching the person. So you can recompose photos. If you deal with something that's complex like this, just make an alpha channel, which is a save selection. If you don't know how to make an alpha channel, type in the words Richard Harrington alpha channel. There must be 100 tutorials I've done. But there it is. And I can say Edit Content Aware Scale and just pick it from the pop-up building list. There it is, building. And now I've got Set Extension. And I can recompose everything else. So very useful for dealing with this type of content. So let's put that all together. Your client gives you a photo, and like, I got the perfect photo for the video. And you cut it in. And they're like, well, the people aren't helping us sell vacation tours. Okay. Could you get rid of them? Sure. Lasso. Edit Fill. Content Aware. Done. Great. Oh, the snorkeler. She's outside of title safe. All right. Content Aware Move. There we go. Content Aware Move. Right about here. Perfect. Oh, no, I changed my mind. How about down here? Okay, we can do that. And it's going to blend. Now, it does a decent job of blending if you turn things up here for color blending. So simply crank that up and crank up the structure, and you will get a better blend on the color and the tone. See, much better. Just turn those values up. Oh, you know what? Can that be closer? Sure. But we got a problem here. It's not the right aspect ratio. Oh, okay. Let's just lasso. Great. Content Aware Move. Extend. Drag. Drop. Drag. It's like super cloning without all the work. Okay, we're done. See, you've got all these tools to move things around and manipulate the data very, very quickly. All right, so that gives you some ideas on Content Aware. I got 2 other things to show you. And let's do this here. So one of the things that I'm a big fan of is being able to work with time-lapse sequences. And so right here in Adobe Bridge, you can just select all of your images and say open in Camera Raw. Do whatever you need to adjust those images. Make your tweaks, your fixes, dial it in, call it good. Very simple. And when you're ready, apply lens correction. That works really well too, by the way. Then just select everything and say sync settings. Now what you can do is spit out your files with save images. But we can also group them right here with Control-G or stack group, and it makes a stack to keep them organized. You can also assign a frame rate. So now, right here, without even having to render, if you've got an animation sequence or a time-lapse sequence, you can watch it play back in almost real time and get an idea of what's happening. All right, one last thing, and that is how to deal with footage with problems. So if you have some footage that you really can't fix inside of Premiere or After Effects, and it's just really difficult, one of the things we can do is totally take advantage of problems with the lens issues. So, for example, let's deal with a couple of issues here. And what I can do is automatically do advanced lens corrections. So here's 4 footage clips. Let's do that. And we'll see how many we can get through. I'm out of time, so I got one. I'll do one. And what we can do is a variety of things to enhance the image. Keep going? No problem. I guess I got time. That's what happens when the next presenter is stuck in traffic. Cool. I got time. So let's open these up. There we go. And we'll just do it the old-fashioned way. Open in Photoshop. There we go. Good. So what we can do here is I can right-click on that video file and say, Convert for Smart Filters. Great. And now I've got lens correction. And I can say, oh, you know what? I know this was shot on a GoPro Hero. It was a Hero 3. Okay, and I click OK. And it's better, but it's not exactly right because it's tilted. Well, we got this great option here called Adaptive Wide Angle that lets me be more aggressive. And I can click on lines, and it's going to snap them. So you can go in and start to fix lines like that. Draw, and literally it's silly putty, rotate the video and stretch it into place, which works really well. Speaking of stretching things into place, we have another tool kind of like that, and that is the ability to draw straight lines on things. So if you've got some perspective issues you're not happy with, you can totally fix it. Let's just go ahead here, 1 second. Open with Photoshop, 1 second, cancel. Open with, I'll just do it the old-fashioned way. So what we can do is we can force that to be corrected, which is pretty amazing. So here we go. Let's open that one up. Filter, Convert for Smart Filters. Filter, Camera Raw. And now we can do everything in Camera Raw on that video file. Noise correction, advanced color, clarity, you name it. And my favorite is the transform tool, because now I could just draw a straight line. That should be vertical. This should be vertical. This should be horizontal. And it instantly tilts and twirls and stretches and tilts the thing and fixes it. Click OK, and it's all set. You can then choose File, Export, Render Video, and you got a new video file that you can use. So it's amazing what we can do here with things like adaptive wide angle, lens correction, and Camera Raw. If you've got a shot that's particularly tough, distorted, or nasty, kick it over here to fix. All right, I mentioned that I was going to give you all 20 hours of online training for free. there's 20 hours of online training for free, so take your picture. My name is Rich Harrington. You'll find me on places like lynda.com. I publish on photofocus.com. And I'll be back here in the Adobe booth the next 2 days to talk about Photoshop. If you want a pass for post-production world, I've got a stack of passes I can hand out over here on the side, so you can go take a class upstairs. They've got classes running all week up in the South Hall. So thank you all so much for coming out, and I hope you learned some new things.